I know this game is about teamwork, but with this loadout you won't even need one, and you'll essentially become the Master Chief of Helldivers 2. After playing this game for I don't even know how long at this point, this loadout is the best all-around weapons, stratagems, and everything you really need to get good at the game. And it's pretty much the best in any situation, whether it's bugs or automatons, solo or with a team, but I'll also go over some items you can switch around if you want to optimize it to specific missions or enemy types. Either way, this video should show you exactly the loadout that you should be using to conquer Helldivers 2. But don't forget to leave your favorite loadouts down in the comments, your favorite weapons, stratagems, anything that you would change, so that we can get all of our big brains working together. For armor, it's extremely difficult to go with anything except for light armor. The only exception I have to that is that the heavy armor is probably more useful in smaller Helldives, where you're just defending a point or eliminating bugs, and then just getting out of there. Since with these missions, you're basically just standing still. During those, you just lay down the best sentries that you have and let them go to town. But we'll go more into that in these stratagems in a minute. In most cases, you want the fastest possible armor, that way you can get away from enemies, complete objectives faster, and all of that. The only way to get that without any super credits is on page 7 of the free Helldivers Warbond. That armor has the fastest speed stat, but so do some of the others that you can buy in the premium store with super credits. This red one is my favorite since it's got the same amount of speed and gives you 2 additional grenade slots, but that was in the shop a few days ago, so who knows when it'll return. The medic armor was just in the shop yesterday, and it's not as fast as the last 2, but it does give you 2 extra stims, which is really nice. But the best one right now, in my opinion, is this red one. Now for the best weapons, where we'll also go over the stratagem weapons, since sometimes I use the stratagem weapons as basically a primary weapon. This totally depends on your playstyle, and I'll go into why in a minute, but the single most powerful, most damage per minute, and most useful in almost any case has got to be the breaker shotgun. I will go over some more weapons that do compete with it, since I think a lot of people already saw the breaker shotgun coming, but the breaker shotgun is just insane, especially the incendiary shotgun on page 2 of the Steeled Veterans Warbond. I use that a lot on the bugs, but the regular old breaker shotgun technically has like almost double the damage. If you don't have the Steeled Veterans Warbond yet, it's totally worth it, and I've farmed over 1,000 super credits in the past few days without even really trying that hard for them, so it's totally doable for free and totally worth it. You don't really have to spend a penny on this game. It's particularly crazy for bugs, since a lot of these guys get burnt to a crisp with the fire damage, but works pretty dang well against automatons as well. But when I do face automatons, I typically switch from the incendiary one over to, like I said, the regular one. The range, at least for a shotgun, is actually surprisingly far. I had no idea that this would shoot this far, and it took me by surprise. And you can take out just about any enemy with it, although if you're facing a charger with just your primary weapon, it's going to take a few mags. Its range combined with its damage and the incendiary, if you do use an incendiary one, plus the magazine size, makes this the best primary weapon, at the very least in terms of close to mid-range. I think 90% of players playing on Helldive difficulty, or one of the other hardest difficulties, are using this weapon. Some good alternatives, if you for some reason have beef with the breaker shotgun, would be the Jar 5 Dominator, which its biggest downside is its magazine size, but if you're accurate, you won't even need a bigger one, since this thing one-taps any small enemy, and a max of 2 to 3 shots for anything less than a charger. Like even the acid bug, 2 to 3 shots to the head and it's done for. Pretty much any weapons on page 5, 6, and 7 of the Helldivers Mobilized Warbond are really good as well. So like the Lays 5 Scythe, the AR-23P Liberator, and the Diligence Counter Sniper. I've heard a lot of good things about the Plas 1 Scorcher, but I have not used it yet, so I can't really say, and that's like a super late game weapon. It's literally on the last page. For our secondary weapon, I've got to go with the SMG here. I really wanted to like the P4 Senator Revolver from the Steeled Veterans Warbond, and I mean, I do like it. It's come in super clutch a ton of times whenever I've run out of ammo in my 2 other weapons, especially since I don't often even need to take out my secondary, so when I do, I need to do a good amount of damage. But once you have to reload that thing, it is just awful. The plus side of that though is you can reload it on the go and reload 1 shell at a time. So if you're accurate enough, the P4 Senator might be a little more worth it, but I really like the SMG. I've found it to be more reliable, and even though it doesn't do as much damage with each round, it fires an absolute ton of rounds at a time and reloads super fast. For the grenades, I go with the impact grenade or the incendiary. The incendiary is really strong against bugs, plus you can still use it to close off nests. This thing seems to do a ton of damage. Usually just depending on the mission though is deciding which one I do. If I'm facing the bugs, I go with the incendiary. For automatons, I typically use the impact. For our stratagem weapon, man, a lot of these stratagems are really good. The recoilless rocket launcher is great if you want to snipe something from across the map or easily take down a Bile Titan. The machine gun is probably the most slept on weapon because it's the first one that you unlock, but you could honestly probably stick with this thing to end game on the harder difficulties because it shreds both bugs and automatons. The sniper, the anti-material rifle, is a great weapon for playing solo since you can take out most enemies at an objective from far away before you walk into the area. The railgun is no doubt one of the most powerful weapons, if not the most powerful, and someone on your team should definitely be running it to deal with bigger enemies. But the two best weapons in my opinion are the grenade launcher and the autocannon. It's hard to pick one specifically because they essentially do the same thing with different playstyles, but both of these weapons are like the one weapon anyone could use even running solo and easily get through basically any mission. Again, the railgun is no doubt insanely strong, like it takes out Charger's armor in 2 hits or 3 headshots, so you can knock off the front leg armor and then go to town on that with just 2 railgun shots. But it's not like the one and done weapon for me where I can depend on it for anything. It's only really useful for huge enemies. Like if you're accurate and hit the Hulk in the head, I think it's 1, maybe 2 shots max to kill that thing. But I personally go with the autocannon because it's more accurate and doesn't bounce around, plus just kills bigger enemies seemingly easier. The ammo capacity with the backpack it drops is seemingly unlimited. It takes forever to run out of ammo, and grabbing magazines from the ground or from a resupply fills up like 4 slots in the backpack. But you can take out nests insanely easy, basically snipe them from anywhere. Usually, because of the light armor, I can just sprint through the nests, shoot them on the way, like do a drive-by on them, and I'm good to go. I can just run out without having to kill any real enemies. And if you do, you just shoot the ground near the enemy and they're pretty much done. But if you don't even want to get close, again, you can basically snipe them from anywhere. You can take out the giant bug trees with them. I think they're called the spores or whatever they're called. You can mag dump a couple magazines into a charger, which that does take sometimes a lot of ammo to use on a charger. Typically, I just run away from those guys or airstrike them. But you can really use it for anything. The defense missions, it can wipe out an airdrop of enemies instantly. But try to reload before it's completely out, otherwise it takes way longer to reload. If you're able to reload before it gets down to the very bottom, it's a super good weapon and much more useful. Otherwise, you have to sit there and load both little magazine slots, and the initial reload once it's empty takes so long. If you've got a friend to reload the autocannon for you, this thing is absolutely even more insane. It's actually crazy. The gigantic downsides to this thing is that if you don't have that buddy to reload for you, you now have to take up a backpack slot, and you can't use something like a jetpack or any other backpack stratagem. Plus again, if you run out of complete ammo for it in the magazine, it takes forever to reload. The grenade launcher basically does everything the autocannon does, except it doesn't take up a backpack slot and can be reloaded on the go. So it's also way more mobile. The downside is that it has much less ammo and isn't nearly as accurate as the autocannon is. So I've been using the autocannon for, I don't even know, like 30 straight hours, and the reloading is beginning to wear on me to where I've swapped over to the grenade launcher for a bit, but it's really hard to do everything that I was doing as easily with the autocannon. The railgun will probably be the best weapon for you if you want to depend on your primary and secondary weapons a lot more for most of the fights, and then just rely on the railgun for some of the harder enemies. But for me, I like to use these stratagem weapons as my main weapon, where swapping to a primary is almost like swapping to a secondary. But if you're also playing on the team and you can be accurate, you might want to be the guy with the railgun. If not, I think the best weapon for a team, or even solo, I run it solo all the time, is the autocannon. The only time I don't use the autocannon is where I'm playing solo and I don't think I'll really have too much time to reload often, in which case I'll sometimes go for the grenade launcher. Onto these stratagems. If you're playing a defensive mission like eliminating bugs or automatons, or I don't know, doing this impossible mission where you have to defend civilians, you're going to want all of the extra slots that aren't weapons or backpacks going to sentry turrets. The best ones, in my opinion, are the autocannon and the HMG emplacement. Pretty much any sentry is good though, those are just my favorites. The HMG emplacement is severely underrated. The only time I've made it through those prisoner escort missions, which seem to be bugged at the moment, is when I am on an HMG emplacement going to absolute town on the bots while a teammate runs around and pushes all of the buttons. If every teammate used one of these and held an angle, you might make it through that mission. It is crazy strong. And if you upgrade your ship sentries, you can hold even more ammo along with some other really useful upgrades. Like I think one refreshes your sentries quicker. So if you're playing a mission like eliminating the Bile Titan though, you might want something like the 500 kilogram bomb. If you're playing this mission, scratch what I said about these stratagem weapons earlier, because you're going to want the recoilless rifle to absolutely destroy this guy with headshots or to knock off some armor. The next best thing under that, possibly just as good or better in terms of damage with each shot, is the expendable anti-tank, especially since it drops 2 of those at a time. Like you unlock that thing super early and you can definitely get away with only these instead of a recoilless. It just might take like 3 or 4 rockets. After 2 rockets though, the Bile Titan is pretty much done. And then along with those, you might want to bring along the orbital laser if you have it, or the laser cannon. The autocannon sentry, I've used that a few times on the Bile Titan and it seemed to have done a ton of damage. I imagine the rocket sentry might do a little more though. So either the autocannon sentry and an airstrike or 2 airstrikes. Use all of those against the Bile Titan and you're golden. Typically, if it's not one of those specific missions, not a specific tank that we have to take out, and not a defense mission, I use the autocannon turret in case there's any time where we need to defend, and then any airstrikes with a quick call-in time. My favorites are the 500 kilogram bomb once you have it, but if not, I went through a good portion of this game just using the orbital airburst strike whenever there are a large group of enemies, and the orbital precision strike on the tanks, and I stuck with those again for most of my time playing. So either the autocannon sentry and an airstrike, or 2 airstrikes. And then your third slot would be one of the weapons that we went over earlier. Now, you have one more slot available. We had the sentry plus an airstrike or 2 airstrikes, and then assuming you did not go with the autocannon, you're going to want a backpack. Pretty much any backpack in here is great. The jump pack is incredibly useful for getting out of the bug situations where you're just getting stun locked in place and you're getting overwhelmed. It's saved me so many times. And then maybe swap that out with the shield generator pack at level 20. I'm okay at the game, but any of the best players that play this game, from what I've seen, typically use the shield generator pack. It becomes really nice to be able to absorb some hits, especially even from a charger. A charger can hit you and it does nothing. You could also try out the guard dog or the guard dog rover. Those are both really good as well. But I think the best are the jump pack early game and then the shield generator pack. If you want to have some fun in between, feel free to try out the rover. If you picked the autocannon as your weapon, obviously swap that out for another airstrike or sentry unless you have someone constantly reloading for you. Now, if you have a buddy reloading for you, that's the huge upside of the autocannon, is because you have its power plus you have an empty back, so you can stick one of those on. If you have a full team and want to be more of a support player though, either reload someone's weapon if they're using an autocannon or recoilless rifle, or run the supply pack and restock everyone's ammo. You will be everyone's favorite teammate. But that is pretty much it. Stick around and subscribe for more Helldivers 2 videos. See ya.